Welcome back to Mystery in Rocky Mountain National Park. Today we're reading Chapter 3, The Scrapbook. Jake settled into the back seat of the truck and was soon overtaken by sleep. He woke up in a flat landscape where the sun was rising, its red light illuminating the fog that rose like steam from the newly planted fields. Telephone poles flashed past the window at a steady beat as Jake blinked his eyes and stretched. "Where are we?" he asked his parents in a raspy voice. "Western Illinois," his dad replied. "We'll stop soon, just after we cross into Missouri." 20 minutes later, they pulled off the interstate. While his dad fueled the truck, Jake and his mom went inside the convenience store. Jake got some beef jerky, peanut M&Ms, a snack bag of his favorite chips, and some chocolate milk. It was road trip food at its best. As they pulled back onto the highway, Jake popped some M&Ms into his mouth, opened the scrapbook, and drew out the note. "Jax, this record of our family's adventures is now yours. Keep it safe. You will want to begin on page 27, photo number 2, Grandpa." He started at the front, turning pages and counting. It was a scrapbook full of pictures. When he got to page 27, his eyes scanned the photos. The first showed a broad meadow where a herd of elk grazed. A winding creek cut through the valley, and snow-capped mountains loomed in the distance. The second photo was of a cabin. Its stone base was built to shoulder height, and wood siding covered the rest of the building. The cabin had a chimney made of the same rock as the stone steps leading to its front door. Jake was confused. Why would his grandpa want him to turn to a photo of some old building? Then he noticed how all of the photos were held to the pages of the scrapbook with small white triangular mounts. Carefully, he slipped the photo out of the mounts, turned it over, and found writing on the back. It read, "Radio transmission November 22nd, 2018. Meet Jasper here in RMNP, the week of May 28th. Hey, Dad, what's RMNP stand for?" "It's where we'll be tonight, Rocky Mountain National Park, just like your grandpa planned." "What do you mean? I thought you and Mom planned this vacation." "We didn't. A few years back, I told your grandpa that I wanted to take a couple of months off work so our family could vacation in the national parks. Since he had spent years visiting all of them, I asked if he would pick some of his favorite places for us. He mapped this entire trip out, reserved our campsites, everything." Jake's dad looked back at him through the rearview mirror. "Grandma said you were looking for something he left for you. Did you find it?" Jake held up the scrapbook for them to see. His dad looked at its image in the rearview mirror. "I wondered what had happened to that old thing." "It's a scrapbook, a journal of your grandpa's travels to see the national parks. From the time he was your age, he would visit them whenever he could. And when they created a new park, he would go off to see it. I believe all 62 are in there. You might find some pictures of me and your Aunt Caroline from trips we took as a family." Jake turned toward the back of the scrapbook and found a photo of his dad and aunt standing with his grandma and grandpa in front of a sign that read, "Acadia National Park." Across the page were more faded color photographs of an island with ships in the harbor. Flipping through the pages toward the front, the photos went from color to black and white. His grandpa became a younger man. Several pages later, a boy appeared in a photo, a boy who looked exactly like Jake, except perhaps a couple of years older. "Can I see it?" his mom asked. Jake passed it through the opening between the front seats to her. She leaned forward and examined the picture. "Do you know who this boy is, honey?" Jake's dad glanced at the photo. "I believe that's my great-grandfather, and the man standing beside him is his dad." He looked at Jake in the rearview mirror. "Your grandpa collected most of what you'll find in there, but it goes back several generations." His mom passed the scrapbook back to Jake, and he looked at the photo again. Mountains filled the background, and just behind the boy hung a long cloth banner that read, "Rocky Mountain National Park Dedication, September 4th, 1915. "Grandpa left a note inside," Jake said. "It says to begin on page 27 at a photo of some old cabin, and there's a note on the back." Jake passed the photograph up to his mom and dad. Seeing the photo and the note, his dad laughed. "That's just like your grandpa, Jake. I think that might be the first clue for a scavenger hunt." What do you mean? Well, when your aunt and I were kids, your grandpa would write clues for us and hide them. Each clue gave directions to the next clue until we found the treasure at the end. It appears he's done the exact same thing for you. Jake held the scrapbook in his lap, stunned by what he had just heard and feeling it soak in. His grandfather had planned this trip, taking them into places like the Grand Canyon, Yosemite, and Yellowstone. And he had hidden clues to create a scavenger hunt stretching over thousands of miles of wild places, through lands filled with waterfalls tumbling over massive cliffs where wind-swept sand dunes met snow-capped mountains. Immense canyons stretched beyond the horizon, and forests of ancient redwood trees reached to touch the clouds. A scavenger hunt in the most beautiful and rugged places on earth. His dad's voice interrupted his thoughts. Well, it looks like your summer just got a little more interesting. When we get to the park, you can show a ranger that photo of the cabin. Someone will know where it is. Thanks, Dad. You know, his mom said, Wes and Amber will be joining us sometime tomorrow. Maybe you could ask them to help you out. Wes was Jake's younger cousin, and Amber was the daughter of his parents' friends, the Catalinas. For years, his parents had talked about the three families vacationing together. So last summer, when they were making plans, they had invited the Catalinas and Wes's family to join them. I think I'd rather keep this to myself right now. Jake didn't like how protective his words had sounded, but this new connection with his grandpa was something special, and telling everyone about it just didn't feel right. His mom turned around in her seat. Well, I know your cousin loves figuring things out. He'd really enjoy it. Mom, I said I just don't want to share it right now. Okay, you don't have to, but I'd like you to keep open to the idea. He sighed and mumbled, All right, I will. Jake's curiosity led him to examine the two other black and white photos on the page. He pulled the second photo out of his mounts and flipped it over. The back was blank. The third photo was of a mountain landscape. He tugged at it, but it wouldn't budge. He didn't want to tear it, so he let it be. Something was different about this one. Its middle bulged, curving away from the page. Jake pressed down on the photo with his finger and could feel something hidden underneath. Sliding his fingernail along the edge, he lifted the bottom of the photograph and the corner of the small envelope slid out. He pinched it and pulled out perhaps the smallest envelope he had ever seen. He opened the flap and tapped the mouth of the envelope against the palm of his hand. Nothing came out. Holding it up to the light, Jake looked inside. Why would my grandpa hide an empty envelope in here? Then something caught his eye. The lightest script in pencil was written along the inside. Jake tore the envelope open and read the message. Find the old man of the mountain. He'll show you the way. That's weird. I wonder if the old man of the mountain is the Jasper guy I'm supposed to find. He filed the message away, tucked the envelope back in the secret spot, and closed the scrapbook. Jake leaned his head against the window and watched the trees go by, thinking about the clues he'd just found and imagining where these next 2 months might take him. Night came slowly as they drove in the direction of the westering sun. They crossed the Colorado state line, greeted by a roadside sign that read, Welcome to colorful Colorado. Jake expected to see mountains. Instead, he stared out the endless miles of prairie grasses bending in the wind. He had almost fallen asleep again when the city lights of Denver appeared. An hour later, the orange glow of the city gave way to the darkness of the foothills. They were following a winding road through the night when Jake's dad brought the truck and camp trailer to a complete stop on the highway. The truck lights revealed the shape of a massive animal standing in the road. Whoa! Jake leaned forward and stared at the creature. That thing is the size of a horse. Is that an elk? Sure is, his dad replied. It was early in the year, but the animal's antlers were already an impressive sight, growing high and wide above its head. The male elk are called bulls, his dad explained, and this guy is a big one. Jake's dad put his flashers on so any vehicles behind him would know to slow down. The bull elk sauntered across the highway and was soon followed by 7 smaller ones, including 2 tiny elk still with their spots. His dad pointed out the windshield. Those smaller ones in the middle are cows. That's what you call a female elk. Can you guess what they call the babies? Well, if the males are bulls and the females are cows, the babies are probably called calves, Jake answered. Bingo, his dad replied. The animals crossed the road and faded into the forest. Mr. Evans turned off the truck's flashers and drove forward into the night. This also means we're getting close. A couple thousand elk live around Estes Park. Seeing these guys means we'll be in the town soon. Estes Park? Is that different from Rocky Mountain National Park? Yes, his dad replied. Rocky Mountain National Park is a park. Estes Park is a town. Well, that's confusing. If it's a town, why do they call it a park? Back when the settlers came from the east into the mountains, his dad explained, they looked for open valleys to raise livestock and plant crops. They called those big open places parks. So the town got its name from the valley where it was established. At that moment, they passed a sign that read, Entering Township of Estes Park, Colorado, elevation 7,522. Jake did the math on his head. His hometown in Ohio was only 1,000 feet above sea level. A mile is 5,280 feet. That meant they had climbed over a mile since leaving home. Is it going to be hard to breathe here since we'll be so high up? It might be, his mom answered. Before you and Nick were born, your dad and I took a trip out west, and it was tough to breathe at first, especially if you're hiking or running. Some people get headaches, but your body adapts and it gets easier. Plus, drinking lots of water helps. Jake searched around the floor for his water bottle and gulped down as much as he could. It was late, so all the t-shirts, ice cream, and taffy stores were closed when they drove through town. But it didn't take long before the buildings and lights of Estes Park disappeared. Soon a big wooden sign came into view. Built upon a rock foundation, it read, Rocky Mountain National Park, established 1915. In front of them, the road split into several lanes, each with a small entry station. It was late and the booths were closed for the night. Jake was surprised when his dad continued driving past the station and into the park. Wait, are we just going to go in without paying? Grandpa bought our National Parks Pass online and we have our campsite reservation, so we're allowed to drive through, his dad explained as they followed the signs to the campground. Jake peered into the darkness trying to make out the landscape. After a minute, he gave up and leaned his head against the window. Driving into his first national park at night was not what he had imagined. He was in the mountains for the first time in his life and couldn't even see them. And with the guard stations closed, he would have to wait until tomorrow to find out more about the cabin in the photograph. We're here. His dad turned the truck into a narrow drive. Moraine Park Campground. Another park inside of a park? Jake asked. Wait, let me guess. Moraine Park is another big valley in the middle of the mountains. You got it. Now let's find our site. It's C240. Locating the site, Mr. Evans backed the camper into the designated spot and turned off the truck. When Jake stepped out, he immediately knew that he was in a whole new world. The crackle of